What might be the funniest part of our next video is the fact that the guy on the left hand of the screen looks like he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be a part of picture day. And yeah, that might happen in high school, middle school, elementary school, whatever school, vocational school, university. But for Ryan Hall, this guy is an absolute wizard at jiu-jitsu, and it just so happens to be his nickname. He works out of 50, spelled 50-50, the gym, and he teaches BJJ. And there is no whiz like this whiz. And if you look at it in his last few fights, he's been the favorite in his last 3. You look at the level of competition. Darren Elkins, that was his last fight. It was a little bit ago. But in that fight, he showcased not just his grappling and his jiu-jitsu, but his striking as well. And it was really, really interesting to see kind of the evolution of Ryan Hall's game. A guy that's 36 coming into this fight. He's a southpaw, and he just offers a different look than what you normally find in this division.
Ryan Hall is why I know Brendan Schaub doesn't watch UFC. I just remember seeing a clip on Twitter, and he was like, Ryan Hall doesn't really throw kicks. But what? Ryan Hall throws a lot of kicks to the point where it's kind of wild. Ryan Hall dropped Darren Elkins with a spinning back kick. That's a thing that happened in a UFC fight. And for Ryan Hall, Shaquille O'Neal, whenever he wants to, be fancy and claim that he's really smart, says, I have my G13 classification in X. And that just means he knows so much about one topic that that's the certification that you have. Ryan Hall has that and taking legs home with him. He is an absolute specialist, not only at jiu-jitsu, but really in leg locks. And it's wild. It might not mean a lot to beat a guy like BJ Penn after, let's say, 2012. It means a lot to beat him by submission, though, okay? You might be able to knock him out in or outside of the cage. I don't mean that as a joke. BJ gets some help. But what Ryan Hall was able to do in that fight was so impressive. He went Imanari roll into a heel hook, made BJ Penn turn the wrong way, and submitted him like it was no one's business. Again, we talk a lot about guys' records and resumes. It's not always how you beat a guy or who you beat. It is how you beat them. And when it comes to how you beat guys, Ryan Hall does it with style points.
Again, BJ Penn, for those of you who are behind the 8 ball, and you might shake and say, is BJ Penn a good fighter? And it comes up, no. Listen, this is one of the best fighters of all time, again, before 2012, before he fought Rory McDonald, just before any of that happened, but the basis of his game was the fact that he could brawl. His jiu-jitsu was insane, and he was one of the lone Americans that made the change from, yeah, I'm going to train in the States, I'm going to train in Hawaii, to I'm going to Novo União, and I'm going to train my jiu-jitsu with some of the best in the world in Brazil. For Ryan Hall to do what he did, even as old as BJ was, that was an absolutely insane win. And then to beat Darren Elkins the way that he did, and I mean, listen, yeah, again, he beats Gray Maynard. That was 4.5 years ago. He beat BJ Penn 2.5 years ago. Goodness. He beat Darren Elkins a year and 10 months ago. Okay, it's all good. We know exactly how good Ryan Hall is. And the craziest thing about Ryan Hall isn't the fact that he's taking on an uber prospect in El Matador, Ilia Topuria, representing Spain and Georgia. It's the fact that Ryan Hall lately has had marquee bookings that have fallen out. He was supposed to take on Ricardo Lamas twice last year. He was unable to do so. Once, it was the COVID card, or one of the COVID cards that fell apart. Then there was an injury. Then he's supposed to take on Dan Ige, Matt, in March. He's supposed to take on Dan Ige this year, and that fell apart. Dan Ige has had main events since. It's crazy.
Ryan Hall's the definition of a fighter who can't get a fight with ranked fighters because he's so dangerous outside of the rankings. And it is unfortunate that he does have to drop to then fight a guy like Ilia Topuria, who, if you haven't been paying attention, is one of the hottest prospects in the UFC, really regardless of weight class. Because in Topuria, you don't just get great defensive grappling, great defensive wrestling. He's got all that in offense as well. And I'm not even going to bring up his boxing, which might even be the best part of his game. Because for Topuria, the one thing that I do have to say is the body work that he's able to do on the feet is really important. And it will be interesting to see because he is a very, very aggressive fighter himself. So it'll be interesting to see how he approaches this fight. Because for me, I think this fight just comes down to game plan for Topuria. If he comes in with a smart game plan, he has more than enough skill to defend the takedowns of Ryan Hall, force Ryan Hall to become a striker, and then just make it one of those weird fights where it's like, okay, I'm beating him on the feet and he's going to pull guard a lot and maybe the fans won't like it, but Topuria should be able to win. Or will it be, I'll be really hesitant, I'm going to wait for Ryan Hall to come to me, and then if I'm the one defending the takedowns, if I'm the one on the receiving end of the grappling, then I'm a little bit worried about Topuria in this fight.
Ilia Topuria, if we know anything about him, really good wrestling to chain it into his grappling and his submissions. And for Ilia Topuria, you look at it, every single win but one by finish, and the one is against Yusuf Law in a fight where he looked great. He looked really, really good. That was his UFC debut. For Topuria, he is the former Cage Warriors Bantamweight champ. It was weird because he fought Breon Boulon and then took about a year off, and he was with Brave. And I remember watching that Bulan fight, knowing how good Bulan could be, who's now fighting on like the prelims of the Cage Warriors cards, and saying, man, if this young guy can get a win there, he could be a star. He goes over, he beats Luis Gomez, he beats Steven Goncalves, then he beats Zalal, and then he beats Damon Jackson. And Damon Jackson isn't Ryan Hall, but Damon Jackson is really slippery on the ground. You saw that in his fight against Mirsad Bektic, where he looked amazing in that one. Well, he looked really bad until he looked amazing, but very, very good. Almost like a Derek Minner type of fighter, even though those are all kind of in the same weight class division, so on and so forth. But Ilia Topuria, really special fighter. So is Ryan Hall. If we look at the odds for this one, Topuria open a -220 favorite. He's a -239 right now. Ryan Hall open is a +185. He's a +190. If we have a look at the Topology votes, incredibly close. 1,472 total votes. I said boats. I meant votes. So let's clear that one up. 55% Topuria. 60% of those fans have him to win by knockout. For the 45% that have Hall, 77% by submission. So the fans think that we're going to get a finish here. Ryan Hall's lone MMA loss to Eddie Fivey in his debut in 2006. He also lost to Saul Rogers of Bellator fame back in 2015 on The Ultimate Fighter Season 22. Then he beat Artem Lobov, the greatest of all time, who was 12-10-1 at the time in the Ultimate Fighter 22 finale to punch his ticket into the UFC. This fight to me is popping popcorn. I will ever so slightly side with Topuria, but I really agree with your analysis and the fact that if Ryan Hall's the first one to the jump, Ryan Hall can get a win here.
I'm kind of smart sometimes, Craig. I'd like to give myself credit. Here's the weird thing. I have so many question marks about this fight because for Topuria, and I'm going to bring up something you had mentioned before with Tom Breeze in the Omari Akhmedov fight. Topuria is a good grappler. Is he so confident in his grappling ability that he is okay with Ryan Hall shooting on him? Because this is my big problem. If Ryan Hall's the one shooting on Topuria, I don't doubt that Topuria can defend the takedown. He's not submitting Ryan Hall. Here's my guarantee this card. Topuria will not submit Ryan Hall. Now, it's probably going to happen, of course, but bear with me. I worry a little bit about Topuria's grappling because he is a good offensive grappler, but I do think his submission wins are a little bit deceiving. He is a guy who a lot of times will hurt his opponent with either ground and pound or hurt them with a big shot on the feet. And it's one of those like, okay, the easiest way out is I'm now going to submit you. I really do look at this more as a pure striker from Topuria versus pure grappling from Ryan Hall because I truly don't believe Ryan Hall can strike with Ilia Topuria, and I don't think Topuria can grapple with Hall, especially not for any extended grappling sequences. If you look at he almost tore BJ Penn's knee apart in 1 second. This is my issue. I like a lot about Topuria in this fight, and I do predict he's going to win. But again, if you do see Ryan Hall shooting on Topuria, he's going to be able to initiate a lot of those Damian Maia, weird like half-guard sweeps and that. And that's why I do get a little bit nervous, and that's why I do say, if you're Topuria, I wouldn't mess around with the wrestling whatsoever. Ryan Hall is one of those guys who, when I think of absolute monsters on the ground, like one shot, one kill jiu-jitsu, Ryan Hall's the guy who I think of. But again, I also side with Topuria. This is a really fun fight, though.
It is a great one, and listen, straight up, it just missed out on our fight of the night screen. This was the other one. We're both going with Georgia and Spain's Ilia Topuria to get the win. I can't wait for this fight. Let us know down below in the comment section who you're going with. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, rate and review. You know, we never ask for
Help
that,
the boys
but
out.
we would appreciate it. Absolutely love the card coming up this weekend. UFC 264, McGregor and Poirier, the third installment. You're going to want to keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, as we always say. Let's get into it.